Good morning. How are you? Good, yeah. Just really unsure about that, how you're doing. Odds are, no matter how you sort of answer that question, out loud to me or in your head, odds are that you are full this morning, okay? So let me walk you through a few options, all right? You need help with your feelings this morning, I can tell. So first option is food, right? My poison that I pick on Thanksgiving is a giant bag of week-old Little Caesars pizza. That's kind of how I get down on Thanksgiving. Hey, don't judge. Come on. Blake, cheese. Okay. What's the thing you're full of? What's the food you ate? Mike, what'd you eat?
Chocolate pie.
Chocolate pie? That's got to be as weird as pizza, right? Chocolate pie? I don't know. What did you eat? Somebody over here. What'd you eat more than usual? Maddox, what'd you eat?
My dad cooked
Barbecue
barbecue turkey.
turkey. Ooh. And everybody went to the Stott's house next year, right? Okay, he's down. Yeah, I think about the amount of food we eat, right, this week. And it's not a hard illustration to kind of jump into from anybody preaching on a stage like this morning, anywhere in the world. But also think about the fullness of our homes, right? Some of us had a lot of extra guests in our house, like we did this season. Meredith and I actually kind of straddled that. We also went to Dallas, so we were part of filling somebody else's house. So we were the people using their bathroom. They were using, so that was sort of our Thanksgiving, and that's kind of typical for us. Full of people, full of food. Maybe that's not you. Maybe that's not your Thanksgiving holiday general life experience that you are so full to the brim this morning. Maybe those first two things you actually sort of lack. Maybe the cupboard is bare, metaphorically speaking, when it comes to, just having enough people, and maybe that sort of actually causes you to be full of something else, full of emotions, right? Negative feelings, and they're more pronounced sometimes at the holidays. I think it's okay. We have Blue Christmas, December 20th, but I think it's okay to be at church every Sunday that sort of makes some space for hey, life's hard, okay? I hope that's a genuine thing you hear from the platform, from our worship leaders to our preachers to our volunteers, that we have struggles too. We're not just all full and happy of turkey all the time at Pioneer Drive. I do think, though, that the fullness is something we have to talk about today. We're talking about gratitude. Last week, Daniel got us kicked off. Now I'm going to come in and correct all the things that he told you from last week. Now, hopefully I'm going to build upon that, right? I'm going to build upon this idea of last week, Daniel talked about the hurry, the things that keep us from being grateful. I think one of the things that keeps us from being grateful is our fullness, actually. The thing that we should be grateful for, these are the things that maybe sometimes get in our way. And my question that I want to bring to the scripture today, and I want us as a community of faith to look at today, Matthew chapter 6 is where we're going to be, so you can kind of flip there, turn there if you've got your Bibles with you this morning. But the question I'd like to kind of put out there is our level of thankfulness directly related to our ability to make room, okay? And kind of vice versa. Is our level of thankfulness, is our capacity to be grateful, to develop more in the area of gratitude, is that directly linked to our ability to make room? And we'll talk about sort of some different ways to make room, some different practices. We'll, pun intended, walk through those this morning. You're going to hear from a special guest. Don't embarrass me. I'm trying to be friends with this guy. He'll come up here and sort of share a testimony to kind of bring things home for us. But I want to talk from Matthew chapter 6 about this idea of making room. Starting in verse 19. By the way, if you don't have Bibles, we always have free ones in the back for you to use in here, but also to take home if you need them. They're under the offering boxes. Leave the offering, take the Bible. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. Instead, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. I've heard this this passage many times before, and I think when I typically have heard it, it's been sort of this challenge to me that I need to have priorities set, right? Like, it's not bad for me to have things. It's not bad for me to have a lot of things. It just means I need to prioritize my life. Like, I need to make sure that God and then family and then my church and like all of that like needs to be in the correct order. It's an idea of like quality, right? Like, I need to move things toward the top that are more important. But I think the challenge for me lately, and especially at this season in my life, is this idea that my life is really pretty cluttered. I'm storing up a lot of things. Food. I'm storing up feelings. I'm storing up apps on my phone. I'm storing up so much stuff that maybe one practice that we could focus on to improve our gratitude would be the decluttering of our lives. That if we could effectively declutter different parts of our lives, that we might make room for God to fill us. When you think about it, it's not just those physical things, but maybe this list would give you sort of a jumping off point. I mean, number one has to be sort of an ironic like challenge for us as a people group, right? Like we have a drawer at home, most likely, that has a bunch of like broken pens probably, and like Parmesan cheese packets from like pizza, 10 weeks ago. That is a drawer that we have labeled junk because we have too much stuff, and so it goes in that drawer. We have drawers at home for stuff that we don't want anymore, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think this applies to all different parts of our life, to the countertops, to our clothing, to food, to the lonely can of mushroom soup in the back of your pantry. I think about junk mail. I think about how many apps you have on your phone. I'm giving you permission right now to look down at your phone and think to yourself, are there apps on this phone I do not use? Because I'll tell you what they are doing, maybe you're not using them, but what they are doing is they are affecting you. They are cluttering your brain. They are distracting you from the things that would bring you life. They're distracting you from being really grateful for the stuff that matters. We talk about noises, we can talk about schedules. Daniel talked about this last week a little bit in the idea of hurry. Talked about it at the very beginning of the year, ruthless elimination of hurry. Like, this isn't something that was just meant for January. This is something that was meant for us to do all the time, to declutter our lives. I put on their lists and money, and maybe those are easier for you, but maybe it's the amount of relationships you try to sustain. Maybe it's social media that kind of is something that makes you think you can be friends with more people than you actually can be friends with. I'm not telling you to like quit people, but maybe to start managing realistically the amount of people that you can actually connect with and serve in a realistic community setting with. Maybe we're trying to keep up with too many people. How many of you get an anxiety level kind of bubble up in you when you've got too many red dots on your phone? Yeah, that's me. I need to like let those red dots just kind of simmer for a second. Because anybody that would get mad that I didn't text them back right away, oh yeah, I might need to cut them off a list with the mushroom soup. Like that's just kind of what I'm getting at here is not just this idea of like trying to tidy up your life for efficiency's sake. It's this idea that we can focus on God better. Again, if we declutter our lives, we can be filled with God more easily, more effectively. I don't know, sometimes we think it's trendy for our lives and our rooms and our spaces to look like this. Like, don't mess with my system. I know exactly where everything is. No, you don't. Clear way, clear path. Again, not just for the sake of efficiency, but for the sake of God being able to fill us up. Talk about mental health. I'm not going to chase this rabbit too long, but again, like the emotions and the things that we store up and that we bottle up. We got to get them out. We got to clear them out. We got to find ways to do those things so that we can focus on God, so that He can teach us the things that He's trying to teach us. I don't know how many of y'all have heard of the author Bob Goff before. Bob Goff is a guy that I kind of found through reading a guy named Donald Miller, and that led me to read Bob Goff. He wrote a book called Love Does. One of the principles from that book that he essentially bases his faith on, these different practices, was this idea that he quits something every Thursday. He quits something every Thursday. Basically, he declutters his life every Thursday. Now, I don't know if you need Bob Goff to give you permission or one of your official pastors, but I'm telling you, you have permission to pick a day to quit some stuff, to declutter, to get rid of things, to give them to God, but maybe give them to Goodwill. To declutter our lives can make us more focused. This one passage, this one quote from a particular book kind of spoke to me as well, and it has to do with our bodies, which I think is something we sometimes fail to see the limitations that we have. It says this from the book Holy Unhappiness by Amanda Held Opel. It says, "The grace of my body is that it situates me in a particular country, in a particular community, in an actual home. The body forces me to be present, not omnipresent. That's God's job. The body is a beautiful border. Contrary to what we've been taught, to think a limit is a blessing." That's what we're told, right? Sometimes to think that limits are a blessing, but I think for my life, I've got to sort of tone down and hone in on what God has for me. And to do that, I've got to declutter. One of the ways that we're grateful for the things that we have is to focus in on them, to sort of increase this focus, to increase this gratitude. I think another practice that we ought to pay attention to might be walking. Speaking of walking, speaking of our bodies, when was the last time that you took a stroll somewhere? When was the last time that you meandered, you rambled through the halls of church, through your own neighborhood, without a purpose, without a specific job or task to do? I think about this verse continuing Matthew chapter 6 and verse 25. It says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you'll eat or drink, or about your body or what you will wear. Is not life more important than food, and the body more important than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to their life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the lilies of the field grow? They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon, King Solomon in all his splendor, was dressed like one of these. If that's how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today, gone tomorrow, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith?" This verse, to me, challenges me to maybe take a walk. To take a walk, because maybe walking would slow me down long enough to appreciate God's handiwork. You know, it's not about being some sort of environmentalist or somebody that's hyper-focused on the creation in the world and to ignore all the things. And I know it's easy for like the long-haired minister to get up here and talk about noticing nature. Maybe that's like a easy stereotype for you to kind of just justify this morning not to listen to me. But I would say that this verse, in my opinion, is not just saying, remember birds, hey, remember flowers. It's saying, actually go look at them. And what it's saying in that challenge is not just to be about the birds and the flowers, but it's to be about noticing small things. To see the message that God has for us in the things that we are failing to notice because we're moving too fast, because our lives are too cluttered, because we move around in these mobile rooms called cars, and we sometimes forget to see the things that we don't see. I want to be better about noticing. Earth is crammed with heaven. Every common bush afire with God. Only the one who takes his shoes off is the one who sees it. The rest sit around and pluck blackberries. That's a poem by like a 19th century poet, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, but it speaks a lot to my heart today. This idea that God's trying to teach me something through a burning bush, through some other type of medium, and I'm just sitting there just content to take the berries, right? Like I'm just content to sit there and take the scraps that I can get. God's speaking volumes, if only we would listen. And I think walking is one of those practices that can slow us down to do that. Every Sunday morning, this is a shameless plug for one of the ministries I'm a part of, but Sunday morning in the sanctuary, that's the other big room on the other side of campus, in case you've never been in there. And it's got pews. That's what those long chairs are called. And in that room, we sort of make assignments to walk across our campus and pray for the different parts of it, the doors, the rooms, the people that are going to be in them, the teachers, the preachers, the worship leaders, the people passing around the offering containers. Prayer walking is different than just sitting there and closing your eyes. It's different because we're asking you to open your eyes, to see the things, again, that sometimes you fail to see. Again, walking slows us down enough to appreciate God's handiwork. This last passage I'm going to read, and I'm going to invite my friend Mike to come on up here. Matthew chapter 7 says, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured against you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye, pay no attention to the plank in your own?" This goes on and on, this passage, to describe this idea that we ought not to judge others. This is not permission to not be wise and discerning when it comes to your relationships or to the places where you put your efforts and your energies into. But I think judging, what it often does is it's an excuse for us not to get to know people really well. Mike, why don't you come on up here? I'm going to have him tell a story. It's this idea that keeps us from being grateful for each other because we've already determined I don't need to know that person because I can kind of tell by the way they look, the way they dress, the way they talk, maybe one single act of what they do kind of keeps me from being grateful for other people's stories. So this morning I have asked Mike to come up here. You got this, man. And I'm going to ask him kind of just to tell a story, but I do want to just kind of give a brief description of where we met. We met in a meeting at the West Texas Homeless Network, which is an organization in town that you can be a part of, just like we are. And it's working with, obviously, our neighbors experiencing homelessness. And so Mike's going to tell you a little bit about his story and then how that connects to the work he does. And hopefully you hear within that sort of some of the elements that we've been talking about this morning. Y'all give it up for Mike. Warm Pioneer welcome.
Good afternoon, Pioneer Drive. My name is Michael Prado, and it says I'm a case manager at Abilene Hope Haven, but I'm also data and outreach for West Texas Homeless Network, where I had the pleasure of meeting Nathan. And then I'm also the founder of West Texas Harm Reduction, and what we do there is we've been fighting opioid overdose. At this point, we probably distribute about 60% of the Narcan in our city, or throughout West Texas now, Ranger to Midland, Odessa. And so I got a couple minutes now. I was nervous earlier. I didn't even notice the screen right here. So that's how nervous I was. So now I got the time and my little outline. I was born and raised in East Los Angeles. I'm a person with lived experience. So I've been delivered from gangs, drugs, prison, what else? Homelessness. I lived in Skid Row from 1995 to 2004. Even 2005, I was homeless in Abilene because I've been here since 2004 in Abilene, Texas. I experienced homelessness and all that good stuff that comes with it. So what brings me to Abilene? I'm glad you asked. Or how did I end up in Abilene? My dad was born and raised here, and so my grandpa left us a house here. I got off parole, been shot, and then they brought me out here. And so here we are. What I can tell you is that Jesus brought me to Abilene, and then Abilene brought me back to Jesus, right? And I'm very grateful for that. I am pro-Abilene. I love Abilene. I will die in Abilene, right? So how I got involved in all this, like I said, I was experiencing homelessness even in Abilene, and then finally started doing outreach in Abilene. How many of you know that we have encampments in Abilene, Texas? Yep. I think our last pit count had over 200 people. A pit count is a point-in-time count where we actually go out in the morning and the evening and engage with people experiencing homelessness and try to get an exact number of what's going on in Abilene, Texas, or Taylor County. And so there's that was last year's pit count, over 200. So we've been trying to deal with that. Next slide. We got a next slide or no? There we go. So what's pretty cool is that Nathan and Pioneer Drive are already community partners with West Texas Homeless Network. And so if you want to attend the meeting, it's the second Thursday at 1:30 p.m. at the Community Foundation of Abilene. Who knows where that's at? Yeah, North First and Mesquite, right? And that's where you'll get to know what's going on. So a lot of people think nothing's going on, but we have an emergency response to homelessness in Abilene, Texas. Of course, it's not as quick as we would like it to be. That's just what's going on. It's not. There is an immediate answer, and that's Salvation Army, and a lot of people don't like that answer, right? So we're fighting. We're fighting for more transitional housing, affordable housing and all that good stuff. The next way is donate houseware items. Visit our neighbors experiencing homelessness. Okay, so I'm not telling you round up the posse and go into the encampments, right? If you want to go, reach out to Nathan. I do outreach. I do outreach several times a week. You know, one of the things I was explaining to somebody else in the morning, I like when the church groups get with me and they bring the Bibles and they pray over our neighbors, right? I get to preach, but not as much as I would like to, right? I'm usually trying to problem solve. I'm usually trying to link them up to a resource. I'm usually trying to get them somewhere safe, get them some warm socks, get them a blanket, you know, so on and so forth. So when I'm able to take out the groups, the life groups in the church, they're able to minister to them while I'm trying to still do the other stuff, behind the scenes stuff, you know. If anybody's interested, he's plugged in already. He's also a superhero in our community, Nathan. But and if you have any old jackets, old toboggans, socks, they don't got to be brand new. They could be. He was just talking about decluttering, right? You could wash it, of course, first, and then you can bring it to Nathan, and he can get it to us. But any questions?
Y'all thank Mike for me. You know, I know y'all know this because we talk about it enough up here on stage and throughout our ministries here at Pioneer Drive. But the idea that missions and the idea that we're supposed to love our neighbor and the Great Commission even and going to make disciples, that's a real just, you know, task for us right outside our doors. But I also think it's ironic, you know, that we have a guest come in, he shares his testimony, and we talk about our neighbors experiencing homelessness. And when you think about someone that is experiencing homelessness, maybe you have this idea in your head. Maybe, not to be that funny, but maybe they look a lot like me. Maybe they got some long hair, they need to, you know, keep up with the shaving and that kind of thing. Maybe it's this stereotype you have, but the funny thing about it is it's like these neighbors of ours, like, they're outside walking, so they probably have a better touch of the community than maybe some of us in this room. Maybe they know what it means to have nothing and know where to lay their head, if that verse is familiar to you or not. They have a sense of that, not that they chose it by any means, but maybe there's a little bit of perspective there for us. And so I think especially with that last point of how do we become more grateful? If we withhold our judgment long enough to get to know the stories of other people, whether it's Mike this morning, or people out on the street, or other people in this room, maybe we would be people that would be more grateful, not just for them, but for where we sit today and the things that we have to learn. I want you to take a moment. We're gonna have one more song of worship, I think, and so Ken is gonna come up and she's gonna do that for us. And thank you, Tiffany. And I want you to take a moment. This is a little bit different than I think you're used to, but I want you to take your prayer card. I want you to take the prayer card. You know where those are. They're in the seat backs in front of you. And I want you to not write down words, but I want you to draw gratitude, okay? So I know that's a big task, right? That's a big idea. But I want you to draw what maybe you're grateful for, but maybe it's just this sense of what gratitude means to you. Maybe it's just a cross. I don't know what it is. But take a minute and consider what you might draw. Maybe take the card home and do that on your own. But just a different way for us to appreciate what God is doing in our lives right now. These aren't conventional practices usually. We usually are thankful around a meal and around a certain time of year. But maybe if we're taking walks, maybe if we're doing little doodles in church, maybe there's just some muscles we can stretch to sort of stretch our capacity for being grateful to God. So let's take a moment and do that. Thank you.